So we come now then to your next career. After your retirement at the Supreme Court bench, you certainly didn't sit idle. You went into a career in mediation. You, in fact, were one of the earliest upholders of mediation as a discipline. And ADR, which I know you ever since have been consciously expounding on in terms of its benefits. And actually I interviewed Trevor Morling not long ago, who also works in ADR, and we spoke at some length about the advantages of the approach. And I know ADR is in fact not new, but mediation is somewhat new. What drew you towards it? You clearly weren't going to sit idle. You had obviously your reasons. It had a lot, I believe, to do with your desire to bring a more conscious approach to conflict resolution, conflict management.
Well, I saw fairly early in my time on the bench the advantages of parties being assisted to discuss and collaborate on finding a way through. I had in Mena House, where I had my first court in chambers, there was a room that had been set aside as the library for the equity judges, and nobody used it, so I used to quite often send the parties out to the library to say, well, can you go and just spend a couple of hours discussing this, refining the issues, and then see where we can go from there after lunch. I had a very heavy list in those days. I was shifting a huge amount of work. I could get on with some other work and then bit by bit the value of the parties having to collaborate and exchange views in a more formal sense, but under judicial encouragement, was borne out in the results of that. So it was that really that led me down the path of mediation.
You know, the more you describe this, the more I think, how is it that so many barristers continue to function, dare I say it, as silos, when you have obviously always been about collaboration? You know what I mean, of course, by silos.
I know. Well,
they're often solitary beasts, barristers, and you seem so different.
Well, think of it rather than a silo, as a medieval fort. Yeah, but look, you're safer if you're operating as a silo. Yeah, you're safer because the principles are there and people can recognise that you're doing what you're meant to be doing. Once you stray outside the walls of the silo, well, you're vulnerable to being picked off. And the silo word is not a bad. I hadn't ever heard it before, but it's got an analogy there that you can hold up within your silo. Well, then you've got good big stone walls there to protect you. But I think, and that's one of the reasons for the conservatism of the law, and particularly the Victorians. If you're in the silo, you're safer, because you know your silo will be protected by higher courts who've been brought up within their recognition of the silos. Nobody's at risk in a way. But if nobody's at risk, you tend to just vegetate in one fixed mode, and you're not really you're not exercising the powers that you have as a judge. In the Supreme Court Act, there's a section, New South Wales one, which the court shall have all such jurisdiction as is necessary for the administration of justice in New South Wales. Well, that's it's a rich mine rich load if you can mine it, but if you can't be confident in what you're doing, it's better not to touch it. And I always had a certain amount of confidence in myself, and my time in the Navy knocked some corners off me, and I like to feel that I had a social and personal awareness, personal warmth, and I had a lot of friends in boardrooms and others, and I could bridge across different issues and interests. And the judicial work to me was an opportunity to carry that further.
You don't think your talents could have led you into politics? These are all qualities you're describing that would have been invaluable in politics.
No, I never liked the two things about politics I didn't like. One was the conflict. I've always found it appalling to have an atmosphere of conflict, and that's what politics seems to be all about. And secondly, the lack of logical structure for political views. There's a lack of discipline, if you like, lack of intellectual discipline amongst politicians. I would have found very irksome.
You mean transcending, of course, the so-called party discipline?
Yes, yeah.
Well, that's understandable, although, of course, the New South Wales Bar has often been described as the nursery for politicians, but at no stage you were ever tempted.
No, I was offered a position in the federal court. It was when Sir Garfield Barwick went on the High Court, and there was a kingmaker in the Liberal Party. His name was Sir John Carrick. He came to see me. He said, "Look, I could offer you the seat that Barwick's going to be vacating." This is in advance. It was the seat of Parramatta. He said, "You'll be a shoe-in to Parliament because it's a blue ribbon Liberal seat, and you won't have long to wait before you're in the inner, circles in cabinet. And we'd like you to. The Liberal Party would like to offer you that seat." Well, to start with, I'd never belonged to any political party. I had a loyalty to my mother as much as anything else. I never belonged to, and secondly, I didn't like the discipline of a party. I was a free agent. I said to John Carrick, "Well, that's a lovely compliment, but my ambitions are judicial, not political. I want to be where I can do something. I don't want to be just one of a number." So I knocked it back. So
I never regretted it.
Never regret. Well, then Nigel Bowen was offered it, and Nigel took it. Nigel then went on to become Chief Justice of the Federal Court, and very much respected and admired for it. But that wasn't my cup of tea. I wouldn't have wanted to do that, because you're engaging in battles with politicians that you can't necessarily win. I don't like getting into battles I can't win.